Okay, welcome back, everybody. All right, so last week we learned about free will, and we went into the issue of, well, if God knows everything and God knows what I'm going to do even before I do it, how can I possibly have free will, right? And well, we saw that the Rambam, he actually has a tendency when you ask a question, some of these difficult questions, he doesn't give you an answer, or rather, he uproots the question to begin with. Well, he says, the whole premise of the question is wrong. And what caused this confusion among all the philosophers over the past 2,000 years was that they made some sort of relation between God's knowledge, God's intellect, and man's, when they are two categorically, completely different things. The only thing they have in common is the word da'at, or intellect, or knowledge, or whatever you want to call it. All right, so went into quantum mechanics, and we showed how there are many differences in this knowledge of God from knowledge of man. Now, due to these same questions, there's been many debate among the philosophers, and there's different opinions arose around, does God have providence over man? Does God know what man does? Does God care what man does? Does God really punish or provide any kind of reward for the good actions of man? All right, and so you have the opinion of the philosophers, Aristotle. He says anything that happens in this dynamic world, God has no knowledge of. Because if God were to know something now that he didn't know before, then that means God's knowledge would be imperfect. So many different questions arose regarding divine providence, and that's the question we're going to address today. And so the Rambam, he says, Hashkafat Toratenu, right? What is the opinion of the Torah? It says, Vani odiacha beze ma shene'emar b'sifrei nevi'enu. Right, and this is what I will tell you what our prophet said, what's written in the book of the prophets. And this is the main idea that all the Hachamim have accepted. And I will also tell you some of the opinions of some of the later Hachamim, later, 1,000 years ago, up until Maimonides' time. And I will also tell you my opinion, right? My take, where he further develops and expands the Torah's position on Ashgaha Piratit, on divine providence. And I'll tell you, Yesod Torat Moshe Rabbeinu, alav hashalom, וכל ההולכים אחריה היא שהאדם בעל יכולת מוחלטת. Right, this is what we learned last week. This is a fundamental principle of the Torah, is that man has free will, man can do whatever he desires. כלומר שיש בטבעו ובבחירתו וחפצו לעשות כל מה שביד האדם לעשות. Right, it's up to man's discretion how he's going to behave, how he's going to think, and do whatever it is he wills. Right, and this doesn't affect God's knowledge, as we studied last week. And this is a fundamental principle. He says, thank God, nobody among the Hachamim ever questioned this fundamental principle. V'chen, And also, Miklal Yesodot Torat Moshe Rabbeinu. Also, another fundamental principle of the Torah, God doesn't cause misjustice. Everything he does is calculated and just. And anything that comes upon man of any type of misery, we'll put it that way, anything that comes to man that is positive, Adam, Yahid, or Sibur, whether it be individuals or the general public, הכל מפני שהם ראויים לכך. במשפט הצדק אשר אין עוול בו כלל. This is all because they were deserving of whatever came upon them, right? Through a just, we'll call it through due procedure. God judged them, and he said, he deserves this, he should be rewarded with this, he should be punished like this. ואפילו ניגף האדם בקוץ בידו, וסילקו מיד, הרי זה לא עונש. He says, the Chachamim, they say, to the point where a person is walking down the street, and he gets a thorn in his finger, and it pricks him, and he gets like the split second of pain, and then he removes the thorn and goes on with his life. He says, even this was a punishment for something. And even if, on the other side, he received any kind of slight benefit, right? This is, God is giving him, he's repaying him well for a good deed that he did. And all this is because man was deserving of this. Right, this is what it says in the end of Sefer Devarim, Parashat Ha'azinu v'chol, ki chol derachav mishpat. All the ways of God are just. Ela she'ena anu yod'im he'ach na'asu re'uhim. He says, however, we are incapable to calculate, right, what causes this little, what warrants this little benefit or this little punishment. Right, it's to the point where some people they have this thing, right, where they take a book, they want to take something in the book, they open the book, and it happens to open up out of 300 pages in the book, they happen to open up on the right page, right? It saved me the trouble of searching for the right page, and so some people they close the book right away. If that happens, they close the book right away. Why? Well, because they don't want to waste their benefit for a good deed that they did on something as menial as opening up the book on the right page. All right, so to the point where when you open the book on the right page on the first time, they say, that was ashgaha. That was a reward that you received for good deed. Some people don't want to waste it. I think that's ludicrous. I think, well, you already received that reward. You decided not to accept it, that's your problem. That's not God's problem. He gave you what you deserve. I also think it's kind of called it kfui tova. When God gives you something and you reject it. Anyways, so these are the opinions, all right? This opinion of the Torah, he brings this as the fifth opinion. I didn't bring everything in the chapter beforehand. He says, according to Aristotle, the Greek philosophy, there is no providence in this world. Everything happens by chance, or by chance meaning according to the laws that govern nature. According to the laws that govern nature, whatever is meant to happen happens, right? If you're good at economics, you'll be successful in economics. There's not, everything goes according to the laws. Sometimes you'll do better, sometimes you'll do worse. It's all up to chance. God doesn't interfere at all. Ashariya is one of the Muslim philosophers, one sect of Muslim philosophers, that they see everything that happens to man and in this world as complete will of God, nothing to do with man's deeds or not, whether he warrants it or not. Hamu'atazila is another Islamic philosophical sect. They see everything that happens has to do out of the wisdom of God. Also, not necessarily because something was a reward or a punishment for what man has done. Remember, the Muslims believe that everything is muktub, everything is predetermined, everything in the universe. Whether a man is going to be righteous or evil is also predetermined. So really, there is no room for reward and punishment. ורואים אותו אנו תוצאה של מה שהאדם ראוי לו כפי מעשיו. And we, those who go according to the Torah, right, we see hashgaha is a function of man's behavior. Whatever man does, if he does good, he will receive good. If he does bad, he will receive bad. ולפיכך ייתכן אצל העשריה, right, this is not relevant for our class. אבל דעתי, right, ועל פי השקפה זו נמשכים דברי המון חכמים, right, and according to this, right, that everything that man receives is in accordance to what he deserves, we see all our חכמים, they follow this opinion. שאתה מוצא אותם אומרים בפירוש, אין מיתה בלא חטא. They say there is no death without a prior sin. ולא ייסורין ולא עוון. Right, and there's no misery that befalls a person if he did not have a previous sin or misdeed to deserve it. ואמרו במידה שאדם מודד, בה מודדים לו. וזה לשון המשנה. This is even, right, this is quoted straight out of the Mishnah. Whatever the way man behaves, that's how God behaves with him. ולא דיברה תורתנו בשום אופן כי במצבי אישי האדם. Right, when philosophers were talking about hashgaha, well, they said, if there's hashgaha, right, some of the sects say, well, God, he does have providence to the level of every single creature, an ant, to make sure he gets his meal at the end of the day. Right, and if a leaf falls off a tree, right, the exact time that it's disconnected from the tree and the path that it went and the place where it fell on the ground, all this is divine providence. He says, "V'lo dibra toratenu b'shum ofen ki b'matzavei ishei ha'adam." Right, but the Torah, when talking about providence, is only talking about about people. אבל עניין הגמול הזה לבעלי חיים לא נשמר כלל באומתנו, מלפנים בשום אופן. So, however, some sort of providence over animals, we've never ever seen anywhere in the Torah or anywhere among the Hachamim speaking of such a level of providence. ולא הזכירו כלל אחד מן החכמים. Right? None of the Chachamim have ever mentioned anything like this. And so this is where the Ramban gets into his own unique take. אבל דעתי, but my opinion regarding השגחה, ביסוד הזה, השגחה אלהית, ומה שאבאים לך. This is how I will explain it to you. ואיני נסמך בדעה זו אשר אבאר למה שהביאתני אליו ההוכחה. Right? And I can't substantiate this opinion in philosophy. I can't prove it to you in philosophical terms. This is already beyond man's rationalization. I can understand it, but all the proofs I'm going to bring, אלא נסמך הנתבע למה שנתבאר לי שהוא כוונת ספר השם. Right? All the proofs I'm going to bring here is all based on what's written in the Torah, v'sifrei nevi'enu, and what's mentioned in the Tanakh, among the Nevi'im. והשקפה זו אשר אני סובר, ממעט את הזרויות מן השקפות שקדמו וקרובה יותר אל השיקול השכלי. Right? It says all the opinions that we have, remember, the Ramban, he said that, we mentioned this in previous class, that, you know, when it comes to physics, when it comes to science, when it comes to the reality that's around us that we can measure and test and experiment, there's almost no debate among the scientists. However, once you go beyond into the metaphysics and questions such as hashgacha peratit, right, divine providence, and free will, these are all questions that already have to do with what's beyond. Over there's already much greater dispute among the different we'll call it philosophers or metaphysicists. All right. So he says, what I'm going to say, I'm already venturing a little bit beyond science. And I don't really have the tools to fully substantiate what I'm saying in philosophical terms. However, we see from the Torah and from the Nevi'im that, you know, it fits in with what I'm going to explain to you here. And so it also fits in logically as well, but I can't prove it. והוא, אני בדעה כי השגחה האלוהית אינה בעולם הזה השפל. He says, right, God's providence doesn't extend to our lowly world, right? Anything, you know, under what they call under the moon. אלא באישי מן האדם בלבד. Right? So it's only applies to man. As we said, most of the Hachamim, all the Hachamim agree with this. והמין הזה לבדו הוא אשר כל מצבי אישיו ומה שמגיעים מן הטוב והרע הוא כפי שראוי לו. And only regarding man is everything we said, that if he did something good, he'll get good, even to the level of you're walking down the street and you got pricked by a thorn, right? This level of hashgacha only happens to man. כמו שאמר, כי כל דרכיו משפט, right? But the rest of the natural world, אבל שאר בעלי החיים וכל שכן הצומח וזולתו, all the rest of the natural world, הרי השקפתי, says my opinion is as Aristotle's opinion. הרי השקפתי בו כהשקפת אריסטו. איני סבור כלל כי העלה הזה נשר בהשגחה בו. Right, so this leaf that we spoke about that fell, it didn't fall because of any kind of special providence on it. ולא שהעכביש הזה טרף את הזבוב הזה בגזרת השם. And not that this specific spider managed to catch this specific fly for a meal because there was any kind of hashgacha, whether on the spider or on the fly. ולא שערו כזה, and this piece of mucus, the spit that Reuven actually, he spit on the side and he hit he hit how do you call it, a mosquito and killed it, right? This is outside of Ashgaha. This is all subject to, as Aristotle would say, mikre being coincidence. ולא שהדג הזה, כאשר קלט את התולעת הזו מעל פני המים, עשה זה ברצון אלוהי נפרד זה. Right? And also a fish that caught some sort of worm. None of this has to do with divine providence. אלא כל זה לדעתי על פי המקרה המוחלט. This is complete coincidence, just as Aristotle says. אלא, however, so what is השגחה? השגחה אלוהית לדעתי, right? So divine providence, in my opinion, he says Maimonides, כפי שנראה לי, נספחת לשפע האלוהי. It's a function of this overflow from God. What is this overflow? Who remembers? Overflow of what? If you remember already from the second chapter that we studied, remember we're talking about how there's different levels of reality, right? There's different levels of reality are basically an overflow of, well, whatever it is. We then, resembled it to water overflowing out of a bucket and filling up the next, overflowing more, filling up the next, right? But what is this that is coming from God? Well, we gave it different names.
You mentioned that it was knowledge, like overflowing of knowledge to the lower.
Right, so
realm.
we've referred to it as knowledge. We've referred to it as existence. We've referred to it as life itself. We've also referred to it as what we said, love itself is also a function of that. And the law, the commandment to love God means to acquire more and more knowledge of God. But all these things are really one thing. And that's why Maimonides, whenever he talks about it, he always talks about it as a shefa, as some sort of overflow coming from God. Or like this radiance coming from God. So he says this hashgaha is a function of that. Vehamin, and what is the tool that man has to receive this? Says, well, we said, well, it's man's intellect or man's knowledge, but that's not 100% accurate, right? We'll keep it at that for now. For now, we'll call it man's mind / intellect / knowledge. It says, והמין אשר נצמד בו אותו השפע השכלי עד שנעשה בעל שכל. Right? So who gets divine providence? Well, he says, why does it come to man? Well, remember when we were studying about Senem Elohim, right? The image of God, we said, והדעת היתרה המסויה בנפשו של אדם, man's soul has this extra thing called da'at. Da'at could be knowledge / intellect / anybody else remember what da'at or de'ot is? Something less intellectual, more practical. Anyone remember? It says midot, characteristics, personality traits, which in the end comes down to man's behavior and actions. So this thing that is extra in man, right? So we learned about it first, calling it the image of God. But the image of God is the source also of free will, and it's also the source of divine providence. Because for the natural world, or the world that's disconnected from this knowledge slash light slash intellect of God, there's rules. There's a certain set of rules set in place, natural order of the world. Everything is governed by those rules. However, what is connected to God, or more, we'll call it intimately connected to God through, let's say, for now, we'll call it the intellect, that has a special place for God, and there's special providence on that individual, person, or entity. So here he's talking about, well, just being intelligent in itself will already extract you from coincidence. Animals who don't have, let's say, the same, or let's say, either animals or even a person, an unintelligent person, he's a lot more susceptible to coincidence, things that happen around him. Let's say you're wandering in a forest, in a land that you've never been to before, and you encounter some sort of native tribes to that area. All right, they're how do you call it? They're gatherers, hunter-gatherer society, right? You don't know the woods. You can't tell weather as well as them. They can sense a storm coming a day in advance and protect themselves, shield themselves. You can't. You don't have that knowledge. Right? So even naturally speaking, having intellect will already extract you from being subject to coincidence. It's like someone says, I've realized that the harder I work, the luckier I get. What does that mean? It means there is no, you could go around life, just hoping for luck, but, what are your odds of anything happening? It's, I don't know, 50-50. What are your odds of winning the lottery? 1 out of a million, right? You wanna get $1 million. You're gonna fill out a lottery ticket. Your odds of winning are 1 out of a million or 1 out of 100 million. Or maybe you build up a business and how do you call it? Be successful, learn some sort of profession, master it, right? And use that to make a nice living, maybe make $1 million, possibly much quicker than you ever will filling up lottery tickets. Right? So already at this level of just having more knowledge of the world, being intelligent, being aware, already extracts you from coincidence. So this person who develops his intellect, or who has received some sort of this overflow from God, right, and connects to it, he is the person who gets divine providence. Right? So anybody who is part of this, who has some sort of intellect, so they will their lives won't be based on chance, but anything that comes to them will be a result of whether they receive some sort of punishment or reward for their actions. It says, right? I mentioned earlier in the previous chapters, a situation where there's a ship at sea, and the ship sinks, and everyone in it dies. Where was divine providence? There were good people on the ship, there were bad people on the ship. Does God not care? Everyone seems to have gotten punished the same. On the same day, the wicked and the righteous that were on the ship all drowned. And the collapse of the building on everyone who's in it. Was this complete coincidence? He says, he says, so according to our opinion, the opinion of the Torah, it's, okay, so ships go to sea. There are storms at sea. Ships could sink at sea. And if that happens, anyone who's in it is going to die. So where does the Hashgacha come in? He says, well, the Hashgacha goes, it's extended to individuals. And so anybody, so people who were meant to not drown at sea, who have this extra level of Hashgacha, they would have been prevented from going on that ship, taking that trip. This is there's a conspiracy. I don't know if you heard of this. There's a conspiracy that the Jews were behind 9/11. Anybody hear that? Why? Says, well, the Jews must have known about 9/11 because many.
What was that? What was it you said?
So there's a conspiracy blaming the Jews for 9/11. For September.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
Why? Because many people that day went to work late and got stuck in traffic, or I don't know, maybe the tefillah in the morning, shaharit that day went a little bit longer, and they didn't make it to work that day. And so, I mean, it's evident that a lot less of the Jewish employees working in the World Trade Center didn't make it to work that day, and their lives were spared than usual. And so some people say, well, they must have had some sort of previous knowledge, or that they were behind it, and they knew not to go in that day, which is absurd. He says, oh, but there were also a lot that did go, just a lot less than usual. They said there was some sort of providence over there that for some unknown reason, a lot of these people didn't go to work on time that day, and therefore their lives were spared. So it says, and also people sitting in going to a building. This is exactly 9/11, a building that collapses on everyone that's in it. And so the people that did go there, well, then God, even people that do have divine providence on them, and they did end up in that situation, in those circumstances, he says, could be because God decided the time has come for them. That was also deliberate or intentional. Right? Our minds cannot understand the relations and how deep this goes. It's already beyond the scope of man's understanding. How to calculate these. Right? But what brings me to this opinion, לפי שלא מצאתי כלל לשון ספר הנביא שמזכיר להשם השגחה באיש מאישי בעלי החיים זולתי באישי האדם בלבד. Right? There is no mention in any of the books of the prophets, on the entire Bible, any kind of divine providence on the animal kingdom, only on individual people. וכבר דמו הנביאים גם על שיש השגחה באישי האדם. It says, and the prophets themselves, they were already surprised that man is deserving of providence. Because man himself is like the lowliest of the intellectual beings, we'll call it, of the sentient beings. Right? We saw there's many different malachim, and man is very, very low on the scale. And he's so insignificant that he shouldn't even be deserving of providence. So, if the Nevi'im were amazed that man being so lowly has ashgacha, well, obviously the animals don't. What is man that you should know him, know his ways, and think of him? There's already many verses throughout the entire Tanakh talking about hashgacha related to man, only man. Right, that God knows the actions of man. Right, that your eyes are open and watching over the ways of man in order to repay each person as he behaves. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe, no, he who sinned against me, I will blot out from my book. And I will kill off this kind of person who does a certain kind of sin. He says, and there's many verses, right, repeating this concept. It says, וכל מה שנאמר בפרשות אברהם ויצחק ויעקב ראיה גמורה על השגחה האישית. It says, in everything that is mentioned, all the stories of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Yosef, Daniel, all of these stories are complete proof, according to the Tanakh, that there is divine providence on man. אבל שאר אישי בעלי חיים, הרי מצבם בהם כפי שסובר אריסטו בלי ספק. Says, but the rest of the animal kingdom and the rest of the natural world, the hashgacha on them is left up to chance, complete chance. It says, והראיה ששאר בעלי החיים בלתי מושגחים. Right, and there's one proof that I can bring that shows, according to the Tanakh, that there is no providence on animals. כי אם באופן השגחה שהזכיר אריסטו, מה שאמר הנביא כאשר ראה מהשתלטות נבוכדנצר והריגתו בני אדם, אמר השם כאילו כבר הוזנחו בני אדם והופקרו כדגים ורמס הארץ. Right, says when Nebuchadnezzar came and the destruction that he brought on all the nations that he conquered, specifically on us, the Tanakh resembles man to animals in that they were completely neglected. It seems that all these other animals are neglected meaning not under this divine providence. It says, and you made man as if they were the fish in the sea, who have no one taking care of them. He says all of them were taken up with the fisher's net. It says whoever was in that area was wiped away. It says man became similar to animal in that there was no providence over them. ואחר כך ביאר הנביא שאין הדבר כך, right? But then the Navi went in to explain, no, these people, they weren't actually neglected the way animals are neglected, meaning animals are neglected. However, they were deserving of this punishment collectively. I want to go forward a bit. All right. וכאשר נודע זה, הרי נודע כי השפע האלוהי המצוי צמוד במין האדם. Right? So once we understand this, we see that this intellect, this godly divine intellect, is attached to man. Man has access to it. כלומר, השכל האנושי, right? Man's intellect. אינו אלא מה שנמצא מן השכלים האישיים. והוא מה ששפע על ראובן ושמעון ולוי ויהודה. All right, so, well, you remember earlier, even when we were talking about the image of God, and we're talking about this connection that man has with God, he says, I'm going back to previous class. I've already explained to you. שזה השכל אשר שפע עלינו מהשם יתעלה הוא הדיבוק אשר בינינו ובינו. He says, this intellect, this mind, we call it mind, that man has, is the connection between man and God. והרשות נתונה לך. And you have the choice. אם תרצה לחזק הדיבוק הזה תעשה. Says you can amplify this connection to God. ואם תרצה להחלישו מעט מעט עד שתפסיקהו תעשה. Says, and if you want to diminish it, if you want to lower this volume of this connection that you have with God, you can do that. ולא יתחזק זה הדיבוק רק בהשתמשך בו באהבת השם. Says, and how do you control the volume of this connection to God? Says, remember, we said image of God isn't something that you either have or you don't. It's not an on and off button. It's a volume button. It could be off completely. You could have zero of it, right? Because you could also increase the volume more and more. What does that mean? It says, well, the more awareness you have, this is more awareness of God, meaning the more knowledge you have of God. And we said that this dot isn't just an awareness and knowledge of God, but it's also how you incorporate it into your life, how you behave. Right? So this knowledge / life that you are receiving from God, the higher level of awareness that you have, the more alive you are, right? Well, the more free will you have, the more providence you have over you. Even divine providence isn't, do I have it or not? Is there divine providence over me or not? Says, well, if you have the Senem Elohim, if you have the image of God, you have divine providence over you. However, there are many, many different levels of divine providence. And the more you increase this connection of yours to God, the more providence you will have in your life. Because your life is in itself on a higher level. You're more alive. So what we need to do in order to always have this divine providence over us is we need to live life on a deeper level. We need to increase our awareness of God always, as much as possible. It's impossible to always be meditating about the oneness of God. Most people, they just go through their lives zero awareness. They don't take any time aside to think, to meditate, to reflect. We have a mitzvah to do that at least twice a day with the Shema, 3 times a day with the prayers. That's what it's all about. Right? So everybody has a different level of providence on them. וכיוון שהדבר כן מתחייב כפי שאמרתי בפרק הקודם, שכל אחד מישי בני אדם אשר השיג מאותו השפע מנה יתרה כפי עיתוד החומר שלו והכשרתו, תהיה השגחה בו יותר בהכרח. So anybody who's able to further develop, deepen his understanding, he will have more providence over him. אם הייתה השגחה נספחת לשכל כפי שהזכרתי, right? So it would seem then, as I said, if the השגחה is part of this sechel that comes from God, this overflow of mind that comes from God, then the more of it you have, then the more providence you should have. Right? ואם כן, and if so, לא תהיה השגחה אלוהית באישי כל מין האדם באופן שווה. Right? Not every individual is going to have the same level of providence over him. אלא יהיו להם יתרונות זה על זה בהשגחה, כי יתרונות השלמותם האנושית. Right? But they will each have a different level of השגחה, dependent on the level of their maturity / perfection. Right? Maturity being how mature they are as a human being, like a fruit that ripens. Right? More complete. Deeper understanding. ולפי העיון הזה מתחייב בהחלט שתהיה השגחה להתערב בנביאים גדולה יותר וכפי מעלותיהם בנבואה. It says even among the prophets, right, they each have a different level of providence depending on how their level of prophecy. See, even prophecy is the same function of this same shefa coming from God. ותהיה השגחתו בחסידים ובצדיקים כפי חסידותם וצדקותם. And השגחה on the righteous, right? We say, well, the prophets, they're righteous, they're beyond that. And there's the righteous people, well, maybe they don't have as deep an understanding as the prophets do, but they're righteous people. They incorporate the right midot into their lives. That brings them more hashgacha, more providence over them. Right? This shefa that came from God is what prophesied the Nevi'im. And corrected the pathways of the righteous by studying the Torah, by following the halachot, by behaving properly. והביא לשלמות מדעי החסידים במה שידעו. אבל השכלים הרשעים, however, the ignorant and wicked, הרי כפי מה שנעדן להם אותו השפע, ירד מעמדם ונכללו במערכת שאר אישי מיני בעלי החיים, נמשל כבהמות נדמו. However, the wicked, those who have disconnected themselves from this godly intellect, well, as we saw previously, those without the image of God, they're not man, and they have no providence over them. And they are neglected to coincidence, right? They're governed, just like anyone else, by the regular rules of nature that govern the universe, and there is no interference, so to speak, on God's end, either on their behalf or against them. They don't get punished either, at least not here. So, and this is a fundamental understanding of our Torah, or fundamental principle. right? That a person gets is ashgaha, whatever level of providence that he deserves, right? Based on what he deserves. That providence, divine providence, is not either you have or don't, but there's different levels of it. It says, look at what the Torah says. It says to Abraham, Anuchi magen lach, I am your protector. Ve'ehyeh imach, to Yitzchak, Ehyeh imach v'avarecheka. It says, I will be with you and I will bless you and bring prosperity to you. V'ne'emar la'adon ha'nevi'im ki ehyeh imach, I shall be with you. Right? Says, Kol ele befirush, all these are explicit that the hashgaha is in accordance to a person's level. So, in the end, it always comes down to the same thing. Our freedom of choice is all a function of our closeness to God, our image of God. Said it's not you do or you don't, you have or you don't. You have different levels of it. So too our providence over us. So, well, if you have the image of God, right? If you're a decent human being, well, then you have some sort of providence over you. However, the more you deepen your connection with God, meaning the more you bring God into your life, have more awareness, God awareness, well, then the more providence you have over you. And there's this beautiful halacha in Ilchot Mezuzah. It says, Hayav Adam Nizahed b'mezuzah mipnei shi chovat hakol tamid. Right? Everybody needs to be very careful to have a mezuzah, put a mezuzah in his house. Everyone is obligated to have mezuzah in their house. It says, Ubechol et sheikanes v'yeseh, and every time a person comes in and out of his house, right? You're coming into your house, you're leaving your house, you're going out to your daily routine, you're going out to work, right? We all get carried away. We all get, distracted in our daily lives. And we come back and we come into our homes and we're just tired from our day at work. Right? It says, Yivga b'mezuzah. He says, the mezuzah is put there as like a reminder. You're going to encounter it. What's written in the mezuzah is the Shema, is the concept of God's unity. Right? Yivga means he's going to encounter the mezuzah. And what's in it? B'yehud shemo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says, every time you enter a structure and leave a structure and come into your house, you're going to be confronted with the Yehud Hashem. You're going to take, even if it's just a momentary pause in your daily routine, to bring God's awareness into your life. V'yizchor ahavato. He's going to remember love of God. V'yor mishenato. And he's going to awaken from his slumber, from his sleep. Sleep being his daily routine where this awareness of God may be sleeping at the moment. Ushgiyato behavle azman, right? In his daily routine, he's going to wake up for a minute. וידע שאין שם דבר העומד לעולם ומעולמים אלא ידיעת סור העולמים. And he will remember that there is nothing eternal in the world except for God himself. ומיד הוא חוזר לדעתו והולך בדרכי ישרים. And then he's reminded and he returns to his awareness of God and he behaves properly. Amru Hachamim, says the Hachamim said, Kol mi sheyesh lo tefillin be'rosho u'bizra'o, says anybody who has tefillin on their head and their arm, by the way, the mitzvah of tefillin is to be wearing it all day long, all the time, and not just once in the morning. Meaning it's meant to accompany you throughout your day. And you have it with you all the time. What's written in the tefillin? Also, the Shema, Yehud Hashem, the unity of God. So anybody who has tefillin on his head and on his arm, v'sisit be'bigdo, when he's wrapped around in his sisit, u'mezuzah befitho, all right, and he has at the entrance to his house, he has a mezuzah, muhazak lo shelo yechita, right? So there's high probability. That's what muhazak means. High probability that he will not sin. Sharei yesh lo mazkirim rabbim. Says because he has many reminders. Vehen hen hamalachim shemisinin oto minachato. Says, and these are the angels. What are the angels? The reminders. What are the reminders? It's your intellect, it's your knowledge. It's all of a sudden remembering that God exists in your life and making God part of your life and bringing this divine providence and intensifying it on you throughout the day. Shneimar, as it says, Honeh malach Adonai saviv li'ira'ah v'chalisem. It says God is Honeh is like a mahaneh, is like an encampment, like a military camp. It says God brings a military camp of malachim around those who fear Him, v'chalisem, and He protects them, brings them out of distress, out of whatever problem that they may be in. It says li're'av. What is li're'av? It says those who fear Him. You can understand it as just those who are aware of God, those who have this divine awareness and incorporate it into their daily lives. That's why we have berachot. Everything we do, not just say a beracha, and eat it. No, that's a chance, that's an opportunity to stop and Baruch and think about it. Baruch Ata Hashem Eloheinu, right? Blessed are you, God, our Lord, Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, King of the universe, who creates this fruit. Boref Ri'a'ez. And so the Hachamim put many, many things in our daily routine with the one purpose to keep reminding us of God's presence in our life, or to help us bring God into our lives, into our daily routine more and more. Any questions? All right, so next time you eat something, next time you say a beracha, next time you leave your house or come into the house and you meet and you see the mezuzah, just take a second to pause and to think about the Shema, to think about God and bring Him into your life. And as it says here, muhazakno, right? High probability that you will not sin. The word yehita also means miss, that you will not miss. Or maybe that you will miss something bad that'll happen. And you will not miss something good coming your way. In the end, there is a lot of probability, a lot of chance in governing the daily, the universe. Right? Remember last week we were talking about quantum mechanics. Everything in the end comes down to probability. Nothing exists 100% in one place. It's maybe 50% here, 50% there. Right? But then when we observe it, we kind of set it on a certain course. So all these coincidental things that happen in the world, well, the Hachamim are telling you, the more you have God incorporated into your life, the less of it will be left up to chance. Or the odds will be tipped more and more in your favor. If there's a 50% chance of something happening that can benefit you, okay, well then maybe it'll be 55% if you have more God awareness. Maybe it'll be 60%. Maybe it'll be 80%. Things will work out much better for you by having this awareness incorporated into your daily lives. And that was divine providence is all about.
Excuse me. What is this in English?
What?
This what you're reading from?
Well, there's a few different things here. It's all from Maimonides.
Yeah.
The majority of what we read is from a book called The Guide for the Perplexed,
Okay.
which is Maimonides' philosophical book.
Yeah.
And well, from all over, it's really scattered all over the Guide for the Perplexed. First
Oh,
section,
okay.
the third section, it's from all over. And this
Okay.
last part over here
Yeah.
is from the Mishneh Torah, right? Maimonides' legal code,
Yeah.
laws of mezuzah.
Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. That's really nice. So really, when we become Jewish, then we need to get someone. We need to get a mezuzah in our door. Yeah.
Yes.
So who would we get? We'd have to get the Chabad to do it, or
Oh, you
Where
can,
would you get? You can get it in any Judaica store.
yeah, but you can also ask Raf Kielstein, Juliet. We will talk about
Oh,
it.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He knows somebody who really is a good sefer and not so expensive.
Oh, okay. That would be good. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know in London or some places that they weren't doing it properly. They were like had
No. You have to have
photocopies.
a kosher one.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
May I ask something?
Yes, of course.
Based on the discussion, how then can we answer the question, why do bad things happen to good people?
That's a whole other discussion. Which, by the way, I did give a class on that. It wasn't part of the semester, any of the semester courses that we had. But you can look back to the class I gave on Tisha B'Av that addresses that question. I'll be studying the book of Job.
Oh, yeah.
So there were some of you attended it, and I think Bracha, you have a recording. If not, it's on my YouTube channel.
Yes. Yeah. I will show you the recording, Rachel.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think somebody's asked a question on chat. It looked like
Oh, okay.
No.
Let's see. Take a look.
no
No.
Midrash Tehillim. Oh, it was.
No.
It wasn't.
There was the class before.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Juliet.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. I stopped recording.
Okay.